Okay, let's go ahead and call up that slide. All right, again, my name is JJ Conway, and I love, love, love this program. It was designed by diversity and inclusion expert Josh Rich. And what you're getting today is a taste of a customizable, compliant corporate training that I'll save a few minutes to talk about at the end. But first, we're going to talk about the roles of the PCI HO model. PCIHO, what on earth is that? Okay, that is the roles that we play in our organizations. We might play the role of a pioneer. We might play the role of champions. We might play the role of influencers. We might play the role of hesitators. I was a scientist in the Air Force for 23 years. We are really good hesitators to have on your team. All right. And sometimes we might play the role of obstructors. And I think when we're talking about change in an organization, like your organization, really what we're talking about cultural change. We're talking about changing the culture, which is really the group habits of the people in the organization. Okay. And so what this requires is kind of talking about the change of each individual. And when we have changes in an organization, then the people tend to fit into one of these 5 roles that we're going to cover. So let's take another look at these roles. We're going to dig into these roles here for a little bit. We've got the pioneer, the champion, the influencer, the hesitator, and the obstructor. Okay. And I think it's interesting as we look at this, typically, you're usually going to have like one pioneer. Okay. This is the person who's bringing the idea forward in the organization. And what's interesting is the pioneer doesn't actually need to be a titled leader. You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about, especially in the John Maxwell courses that I offer, is that leadership is influence. Leadership isn't a title. You may be titled the leader, but you may not actually be the leader. And similarly, you may not have the title of leader, but you may have the respect of your peers and be able to influence your peers. And that makes you a leader. So a person who is the pioneer could be anyone that may have witnessed something that spawned this desire to bring diversity inclusion program into the organization, or someone who has, watched it on the news or had it in their awareness. And so as we go through this model and identifying the roles, you'll notice that there's going to be, just by nature, there's going to be more influencers and there's going to be more hesitators as well. All right. So, but I think the important thing here is to recognize this is not an exercise of gotcha. This is an exercise of awareness. Okay. What we're hoping as we walk through this for the next couple of minutes to set the intro stage is that we're going to expand your awareness of the role that you play in your organization as it relates to diversity and inclusion. Everybody plays a role. Even the obstructor. I know that has a negative connotation in our society today, but someone who is considered an obstructor still brings value and protection to an organization. They may feel like an obstructor, but they're trying to protect the organization. And we want to appreciate that in our discussion today. And as we talk about influencers and hesitators, again, that's where the majority of the people are going to find themselves. And so for those that might be or would be a pioneer, it's really important for you to note that the influencers and hesitators are looking to you for leadership. Now, each one of these roles sees their purpose in a slightly different way. So let's look at this for each of the roles. I've got up here that the pioneer, they tend to see their role. Their purpose is to create and cast a vision for change. Whereas the champions, they see their purpose as supporting that vision and supporting that plan for change to the pioneer. The influencers tend to see their purpose as carrying the message to the community, so lighting other candles with their light. Oh, I love that illustration. They're lighting other candles with their light. Hesitators tend to see their purpose as, well, hesitating, waiting and seeing and watching from a safe distance. Like I said earlier, as a scientist in the Air Force for 23 years, you would find that many scientists end up in that hesitator category. And it's really designed to help keep like the obstructor, the organization safe. And it's not necessarily out of a lack of concern for all people. It's a desire of concern for the organization. Okay. And so you find that also the obstructors in an organization who do see themselves to be obstructive to change, but we want to understand that most of the reason why an obstructor is choosing that is because they don't see the purpose to the change. They may lack the purpose to the change, or they're concerned that the purpose to the change may not be as hunky-dory as everybody's trying to make it. All right. So if you find yourself resistant to these concepts, and I don't know that you would necessarily be on my channel watching this if you were resistant to this, but if I was to bring this into your organization, you might find that people are being resistant to the training. We might want to think about what the purpose is and how we can make it a significant positive change within the organization. So as we move from what the purpose of being in one of these roles might be, we can also look at what motivates us in that purpose. So before I do that, let me just ask you a question. Just think of an organization in which you are playing a role right now, and think about these 5 roles and just kind of think about which one are you. So maybe it's your church that you're working with and some change is being implemented, or maybe you're in a other volunteer organization, or maybe they're trying to change things at work. Think about whatever the change is. And today we're talking about diversity and inclusion, but maybe that's not the change you're facing at work. Think about what the change is, and then think about your role as we slip through these topics, okay? Which one would you self-identify with? All right. Now let's talk about the motivations. So a pioneer is motivated, generally speaking, by bringing out the best. A champion is motivated by being on a winning team. And come on, let's face it, who doesn't want to be part of a winning team, right? An influencer is motivated by moving people to action. Most influencers, honestly, they're peacemakers. They are unifiers within the organization. The hesitator is motivated by the status quo, not rocking the boat. You know, I remember when I first joined the Air Force, I was this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed lieutenant, and I had all these ideas. I had grown up an Air Force brat, and I just knew I was going to change the world. And I had all these thoughts and ideas. And then I met the butterbar brick wall. Okay. I discovered that nobody wanted to hear my ideas. Nobody wanted to accept my changes. Nobody wanted to improve processes. Nobody wanted to make things more efficient. Oh, I was so frustrated, right? Fast forward 10 years, and now I was a major in the Air Force. And one of my mentors was actually one of our bishops who had retired from the Air Force at the same time that I joined the Air Force. He said, well, congratulations on your promotion. I understand things are going well in your career. Let me ask you something. Do you understand now why nobody listened to you when you were a lieutenant? And I was like, yes. So sometimes, it's not that people are trying to hinder progress when they want to keep the status quo. It's just they're tired of everything changing for no good reason. And they want to make sure that if you are going to change something, that it's actually the right thing to change, not just a knee-jerk reaction, and not just because somebody wants a star on their performance eval, a bullet on their OPR so they can get promoted. Okay. Now, we find a very interesting motivation for the obstructor, which is really being motivated by a fear of change, the unknown, and being wrong. Oh, they do not want to be wrong. Scientists tend to fall in this category a lot too, because we tend to be analytical and we want to do all the research and make sure that we're right. And some of us have learned how to move past that need to be 100% right as we ascend into leadership, because we understand that leadership goes on a faster pace than being able to assimilate all the data and be 100% right about your decisions. But I still value people who have the mindset that I'm going to do the thorough analysis. I appreciate them because they do the analysis, so I don't have to do so much analysis. Okay, maybe that's a little too much. But we want the point that I'm trying to get across is it takes all kinds of personalities to make a functioning organization, and we want to value the contribution that everybody makes. Regardless of where somebody falls on this chart, they can still be treated with dignity and respect, just the way we'd want to be treated when people disagree with us. Okay? How we identify is so important. And so let's look at that for each of these roles. You can see here that if you're the pioneer, you tend to identify as empowered, whereas the champions, they tend to identify as supportive. The influencers tend to identify as enthusiastic, whereas hesitators tend to see themselves as responsible, right? They tend to see themselves as responsible. Obstructors, they tend to identify as being right. And if they're insistent on being right, well, sometimes that puts you in a position where that makes everybody else wrong. And you can see for yourself how much of a difference that it makes. I mean, think about maybe you're a pioneer and you see yourself as empowered. What a difference from an obstructor at the bottom and how they see themselves being right. And then think about the spectrum here. If you are seeing yourself as an influencer, someone who's responsible for change but also wants to make the peace, what a difference that is for someone who sees themselves as a hesitator and thinks they're responsible for holding things up until the organization can do thorough analysis to help keep the organization safe. You see how all of these different things can play along each other, and how, more importantly, do you see how each of these identifications, purposes, and motivations can actually bring more clashes instead of more unity? So we want to bring more unity. One of the most powerful and empowering thoughts that anyone can have, as Wayne Dwyer pointed out, is that when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And it's so important for us that if we can change the way we see ourselves as it relates to diversity and inclusion, things not only change, but more importantly, it can become a game changer for the organizations. And this is really where the rubber meets the road, when you can see yourself as a key part of the solution. When we change the way we see ourselves, when we change the way we identify, that's the opening door for us to begin to make a change in our behavior. And of course, when we think of our behavior is being driven from belief. What holds our belief in place is often the framework of our self-talk. But you can see as we walk through this, it's not important just to know your self-belief and your framework, but to understand everybody else on the team and what they feel their purpose is and how they identify. Okay. So now let's take a look at this fourth column. A pioneer's self-talk might be, okay, this is wrong. How do I make this right? What can I do to lead? And of course, their behavior begins to be driven by that. Champions, their self-talk is more along the lines of, what can I do to help? How can I add value? And of course, that also shows up in their behavior. An influencer self-talk is, how can I spread the word? How can I take this to more people in the organization? How can you get others to join in? How can I take this further? What can I do to multiply the impact? Hesitators are asking themselves, is this safe? Is this safe for me? Is this safe for us as an organization? A lot of times they're like, let's wait and see. And we've seen that in their behavior. We've seen that so many times, that somebody has this grandiose idea and it's just going to burn itself out. Now, come on. We know that that's kind of how a lot of things happen because of all the different motivations. And so we have to be very careful not to just dismiss the hesitator, but to honor and accept and work with the purposes, the motivations, and the behaviors. Remember what Wayne Dwyer said. So when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And as Takitha said here, things change. We're going to emphasize that, all right? And so we want to understand that this is the self-talk. Is this safe? Is this gonna work for me? Let's wait and see. Don't stick your neck out. Don't make yourself the fall guy. Don't get yourself in trouble. Okay? Stay safe. The obstructors, they will say things not only to themselves, but also to other people. And this is kind of like, you've heard this before. Here we go again. It's another program that's not going to work. Oh, this is such a waste of the organization's time and money. And they might even deny the problem. And you could see that present in their behavior. Okay. And so as we move to the last column, which is change driven action, it starts the process of thinking about what actions we can take. Okay. So this now is where we shift to being about you, empowering to change. And that's the benefit of these questions that we're going to share. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. We'll start with the pioneer here. In terms of change driven action, the pioneer, they want to clarify the vision. You got to clarify your vision and you got to make it safe for everyone to join you. Now, I will admit, it took me a long time to realize that my charge out in front pioneering self, oh, I thought I was doing all these great things and I thought I was going to implement all these changes, but I did not make it safe for people to join me. I didn't make it safe for people to see that this was the right path. I didn't make it safe for the influencers to see that they were going to be able to bring the peace and the harmony. These are things that I had to learn. And some of you have been trying to institute change for a very, very long time, and you haven't learned how to make it safe for others to come with you. Now, it's never going to be 100% safe, but you can do what you can to understand where they're coming from. That's all we can ask. All right. Want to clarify that vision so that people see where they're going, where you're trying to take them, and how it's going to be better for everybody. All right. Champions tend to bring that structure and organization, and they want to make things as inclusive as possible. And so for you as a champion, one of the things that you're good at is celebrating the incremental steps forward. You know, sometimes the pioneers get so caught up in the end goal, they don't think about celebrating the incremental goals. All right. And so you want to make sure that you have some champions there to celebrate and help keep the energy up. Okay. And so we want to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table. All right. This is so much fun. I hope y'all are having as much fun as I am. Influencers, I'm going to ask you to bring your voice alive. Be loud and proud and help the organization move with intention and purpose. I'm going to I'm going to ask you to help get out there and spread the word and encourage and influence as only you can to get others to join in. Hesitators, I'm going to ask you, what's one thing that you can do? What's one thing that you can do to move forward to what you think may be right? What is one thing you can do to move forward, to test and see about the safety rather than wait and see? And can you risk getting it wrong? Can you risk not being 100% right? You know, this is a big one. This is a big question for a lot of people today, because we don't want to be wrong. We're in a society, everybody preaches tolerance, everybody says we love it. But, you know, a lot of times it's a one mistake Air Force, it's a one mistake corporation, it's a one mistake church, and you're branded for life. It's a one mistake culture. No matter how much we say, you know, march to the beat of your own drummer, no matter how much we say, be tolerant and accepting and loving, we still have those societal and cultural fears hanging in our subconscious. And I'm just going to encourage you. If you're in a situation where you've fallen into the role of hesitator, or you feel that that's the best role to help keep your organization safe, I'm going to ask you to just look for an area where you can take one step that you're not keeping it safe and that you're willing to take the risk of possibly maybe being a little wrong. For our obstructors today, I'm going to ask if you can be open minded to a new idea and seek understanding. I'm going to ask you to declare noble intent, which means that you're going to assume, you're going to declare, you're going to proclaim that the other person bringing these ideas to you, they're not malicious, they're not trying to harm you. They really do mean the best. Now, they may not know everything. They may be like the lieutenant talking to the major. They may be like I was when I started out my career, talking to those who'd been around for a while. They may not have all the understanding that they need. They may not have all of these things, but can you be open-minded to at least find out? Can you be open-minded to declare noble intent that they really do mean well? And then find out if there's a there. Find out if they have enough understanding. Give it a chance. And then if you just can't be for it, well, maybe if it's, maybe just don't be against it, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Okay. So I think as we go through this entire framework and model, it's really about asking yourself these questions. And it's really about kind of identifying, where do you self-identify? Where do you fall in all of this? And then what's the role that you're playing in your organization? Remember I asked you at the beginning to think about an organization. This is a training that I take into corporations, but think about an organization that you're in right now. Where do you fall in that organization? What role are you playing? Can you take some steps forward? I'm not asking everybody to be on board with every change that comes along, but I am asking you to give it a chance. I'm asking you to declare noble intent and just be open. Ask yourself, what's your purpose? Ask yourself, what's the purpose for even watching me today? Or if you're to bring me into your organization, or if someone else brings me into your organization, what's the purpose? What's the goal? What do you want the outcome to be? James Allen said that until our thought is linked with purpose, there's no true intelligent accomplishment. There's no true creation of something new. I want you to ask yourself today, what is motivating your behavior? What is the belief system that's driving you as you look at the identifiers? Could you take one of those action steps in unity? You notice that all of the roles had an action step to take, not just those who might have a more negative connotation. Because you can be a pioneer and you can go off and try to create change, and you can actually create so much hesitation and obstruction by not bringing everybody along that the organization ends up worse for all of your hard work and all of your passion. It's so important to understand where your beliefs and self-talk are leading you. And it's so important to ask yourself, could I take an action step? Could I look at how I identify myself, and could I find one thing that I can do to move this organization forward? This goal has to be to the common good of all of us, because united we stand and divided we fall. I want to encourage you, that you're here, you're watching this, because you know that not one of us can get the job better done than all of us working together. And it's in that spirit of working together to implement diversity and inclusion in our organizations in a way that brings sustained change, improved processes, higher profits, greater productivity, and greater personal satisfaction and empowerment for all of the employees. That is the goal that we have today. So I want to encourage you, as we go and close out this session, that this is just a piece. This is just a piece of what we do and our another seat at the table, diversity and inclusion training. And if you want more, if you want to bring this training to your organization, I want you to text ASAT for another seat at the table to 254 274-3055. This training, the full training that goes along with this, is customizable from a lunch and learn to a half day to a full day format. And we even have ongoing education weekly products. Okay. So we have something that's customizable for every budget and every size organization.